This is Bits and Pieces, the official podcast of Component Supply. I'm Kristen.
And I'm Mark.
And if you don't already know, Component Supply is a stocking distributor and fabricator of components that are used in a variety of industries, but we are particularly focused on the medical device industry. The mission of Component Supply is to be a resource for researchers and product designers by connecting them with the components and knowledge they need to change the world. In our podcast, we're going to be talking about company history, components, and capabilities. But since this is our very first podcast, we are going to start with an overview of our company history. So Mark is here to help us do that today. Mark, how are you?
This is our first podcast, so today's good.
It's a good day. It's a good day. So when we talk about component supply history internally, we often talk about small parts, Inc. And we're not just talking about little things. We are talking about a decades-old medical device supplier that you had the opportunity to work with. Mm-hmm. And we'd love for you to tell our audience about your role in small parts.
Yeah, so my family was actually brought on to sell small parts for Dr. Murphy. He was in his 80s at the time. He had gotten to the place where he really just wanted to divest of certain things and only focus on some technologies and research that he was interested in. So we were brought on to position the company and then find a buyer for him. Mm-hmm.
But you stayed on for a while.
We did. We stayed on. I think he wanted to sell the company, but he didn't really want to sell the company. He just
because he loved the industry.
He loved the industry, and so we finally just got to a place where we thought, why don't we just run this for him? It can be. We would make it a burden. He could focus on the new technology and the new products that he was focusing on, and just relieve him of the burden of a distribution business, because it was really just a distribution business. Sure. And fabrication. And so that's how we got there and how we stayed on.
Right. So if you're going to start out in the medical device industry, small parts was a great place to do it because Dr. Murphy was there and he was a mentor to you. Do you have any lessons or takeaways from your time with him specifically?
Yes. I originally wanted to sell surgical equipment. That is what I started off in life to do. And so I studied medicine, or at least attempted to start that. And then, but I never really wanted to be a doctor or surgeon. And my professors said, you really shouldn't. Like, there's no reason to do that. So I got out of that. I still stayed in some of the sciences, the biologies and chemistries, but sort of at the end of my career, or college career, I sort of gave up that. And then I had this opportunity to work with this company and this man. And so there were a number of conversations, just that kind of excited me from a research standpoint. But he would make these comments that, once you're in this, you can't ever really retire. You don't really get out of it.
He didn't mean it as a prison sentence.
Not really. No, it wasn't a prison sentence. I didn't really understand it at the time, but here he was in his 80s and still developing technology, still pursuing the medical device advancement. And so it became a little real to me just by watching him. But that actually did stick with me because there was this commitment to the patient. He was a medical doctor as well as a mechanical engineer, and so there was a commitment to the patient. Who was going to be on an operating table, and that made an impact on me. And I also remember one particular time. There were various instances, but one particular time he came in and had bruises all up and down his arm. This was over the weekend. Obviously, I asked him what happened, and he said he had this idea for a new injection needle that people sometimes are apprehensive still about injections, and so he thought, well, what if we came up with something rather than a puncture system, something that kind of like quickly cored?
Nope.
And it was a bad idea is what he came back with. That was his. But apparently over the weekend he had designed it and developed it and came up with a working model.
He failed well.
But just that idea of here's someone in his late 80s that's still pursuing a different device. and those kinds of things just kind of crept along with me. That commitment to making better medical devices.
Right. Well, at some point, you did sell small parts, and when we first started going to the MD&M shows to represent component supply, we would go to the shows and give our spiel about being a resource for R&D and the components that we sell and all these things. And the response from the people we were talking with would often be, man, that reminds me of this company, Small Parts. They were awesome. Whatever happened to them? Or yeah, did you hear they sold? Man, that was terrible. What was your response to some of those things?
Yeah, generally I was kind of like, yeah, who would do that? Who would sell that? That great company. No, it was a little bit of an honor to hear people a decade later talk about, how well that company treated them, or just the commitment side of that. We wound up selling to Amazon.com. They wanted in the industrial and scientific space. It was the best thing for Dr. Murphy.
Sure.
This is what we originally wanted to do for him. We had the opportunity, and so it was the best thing for him. And over the years, Amazon decided that there were bits and pieces of that business that they wanted. And most companies do that, right? They find something, they collect the things that are part of their core competencies.
Sure.
And there's parts that they didn't. So they did whatever any good business would do, and that is keep the parts that made sense for them and get rid of the ones that were kind of contrary to what they were trying to accomplish.
So you stayed on at Amazon for a little bit, and you had a lot of great learning experiences there. You want to tell us anything about that?
Yeah, no, I working with Amazon gave me a lot of great experiences. I spent a good bit of time in the operations and the buying side, so product selection, and I think they kept me on for that because I knew the products in our industry. I was good at operations, and so it gave me the chance to work with some really incredible operations people, and I mean they are quite a distribution company.
And a lot of that carries over into component supply. A lot of it carries over.
It was great. It was a great experience. But at the end of the day, I didn't want to just do distribution. That really wasn't. I was there at Small Parts at the time, but the love there was really not distribution. It was really the push and the progress in medical device.
Sure.
But my time there was good, and we learned a lot. I was able, I think, do a good job for them for what they were trying to accomplish, and then left in 2007 or so.
So after, of course, you had some kind of non-compete.
Yes.
So you weren't in the medical device industry for a couple of years. What did you do during that time? So
that was one of those moments where you're sort of kind of figuring out what do you do when you grow up,
right?
And it was a little more difficult than that because it was not just medical device. It was also just distribution as well, especially in the B2B space. So I didn't know that what the plan was, but we wound up getting into construction, to be honest. Okay. My family has a rich history in construction, so we thought, well, we'll just go back to construction. That sounds like a good idea. And so that's what we did. But
then at some point, you get a call from Amazon, and they're wanting to part with some part of the business that you had
That's
sold.
Right. They had decided, again, they had gone through and made their decision on what made sense for them and what didn't. But there were still customers that needed the aspects of what they were no longer going to keep. And we were fortunate that they called us back and said, "Are you interested?" And we very much were. And
so you bring up some equipment up from South Florida to Central Florida, where component supply started, and you're working there really with a small team, really just you and your dad to start, right?
I mean, we got all this equipment, we brought it up, tooling, and we didn't really know what we were going to do with it. It happened very fast,
right?
And so honestly, we just stuck it in storage.
But then you got purchase orders to Mark Maffitt for hypodermic tubing or whatever it was.
Fabricated part. I mean, it happened so fast that need evaporated so quickly, or the supply evaporated so quickly, and there was still a need for it. So yes, we didn't have a chance to even think about what we were going to do. It was sort of the decision was made for us, and we just we started making parts.
But then it kept growing.
Component
supply kept growing, I think, despite your maybe original thought of we'll just keep it small.
That was it. We were just going to stay very small and
small job shop,
handful of customers, the device manufacturers we wanted to work with, and that was kind of the plan.
Yeah. And so in 2017, you look out at your little campus in Central Florida and you've outgrown it, essentially. You can't add any more buildings. You need more people. You have to make a change. And you've said that you've spent half your life by the ocean. Maybe you should spend half your life, the next half of your life, closer to the mountains.
Sure.
And so you started looking in the Tennessee area. You're looking to be closer to UPS and FedEx hubs that are located closer to like in the middle of the country.
One time zone over.
One time zone over for California, particularly California customers. So you've done all these things. You've made some changes. Component supply is not small parts, but there were some things that were brought over from small parts. Can you tell us some of the similarities and maybe some of the differences, both for people who worked with small parts in the past, but also those who maybe haven't heard of them before?
So I would, at the highest level, the similarities end up around this idea of being a resource for researchers and product designers.
Right.
If you remember the old small parts catalog, for those of us that had actual catalogs, it was terrible marketing. We would have a page that had, half of the page was information about the stainless steel or some material, and there'd be like 3 products for sale.
Right.
Anybody putting a catalog would just die at that.
Well, there are universities though that use the small parts catalog as the textbook for that class.
Yes. In fact, if you looked at the small parts catalog, it said, small parts Inc. catalog and resource manual. And so that idea of being a resource carried over when we built our website. That was the idea of we want more information than people would necessarily want. We want to put a lot of information. We want to be a resource. And then the idea of not just simply the resource for information, the idea of having the product offering, a complete and comprehensive product offering. So that at the highest level is kind of the similarity. The product lines, a lot of them are the same. Part numbers.
But you didn't add everything back.
We did not add everything back.
There was so much.
It's,
it would have been a really big website.
Well, and he was very involved with Woody Flowers and Dean Kamen with the first robotics, and so there was this idea that small parts really supplied a lot of that for that competition, which was incredible for science and technology. To this day, still is, but we had gears and drive shafts and components. We had components that didn't make sense for the kind of the work that we did. And so drill doctors, tools, there are good companies that do that, and we kind of stayed out of that.
And while small parts did some fabrication, that's really the side of the business of component supply that is growing rapidly and that we keep wanting to build because there is a significant need.
Yes, we had some limited fabrication at small parts. And that was just sort of a business decision. The people that were running it were actually incredible machinists, but really could have done more had that been a strategic move. It just wasn't a strategic move.
Right. They were focused on distribution.
They were focused on distribution, and so we're focused not only on distribution, but understanding that at the end of the day, you didn't really need a 60-inch piece of hypodermic tubing.
Right.
You were going to do something with that, and you may have the capabilities, you may not. But
you may have the time, you may not.
You may have the time, and you may not. And so, as being a resource, whether it was the capability or the time, we knew that the fabrication needed to be there as well as the source of the material.
Right. Well, I so appreciate you sharing that history. I'm sure that we'll have more small parts stories or memories that come up through the podcast because it is a big part of component supply history. And as a resource for research and product designers, we really can't talk about component supply without talking a little bit about small parts. So I'm sure that will come back up over time. But we love to talk about component supply history. We love to talk about the good old days when we were in Florida. And so if you're ever at an MD&M show, Minneapolis or in California, we're there. If you're ever driving through Middle Tennessee and want to talk small parts history, I'm sure we would love nothing more than to share more stories with you. It's a great history to be a part of. But now we've talked about history. We're going to talk about our component feature for today. And we're not going to get too in depth because this is bits and pieces. We're trying to keep it short. But we will talk about hypodermic tubing. It's the category that we have the most parts in. It is in competition with wire for the most capabilities for. So we're going to talk about it, but we're going to do it in game fashion. If you've visited Component Supply, it's quite possible that we've played a game with you, whether it's Jumbo Jenga in the back or some silly game. We love games. We think engaging in games is a great way for trainings and other things. I'm sure you've seen some of this on our social media. So Mark, if you will grab your whiteboard and your marker and your eraser, just in case you make a mistake. I know we talk about 15 years of near perfection. We just celebrated our 15th birthday last year.
This is also a good place to fail. So.
It's a safe space. So I'm going to ask you some questions to see how well you know your hypodermic tubing offering.
I'm the game.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
If you get the answer right, you will hear this. If you get the answer wrong.
Okay.
Okay. Are you emotionally prepared?
Does it matter?
No.
Okay.
Okay. What are the gauge size ranges of Component Supply 304 hypodermic tubing?
Oh. What's listed on our website or what we have in our warehouse?
The fact that this is even a question is very troubling to me. Let's talk about what's on our website.
Okay. What's on our website is 6 gauge to 33 gauge.
This is being validated in the back, yes? Yes, it is. Why did you give the caveat of, oh wait, I forgot.
Give me the...
You needed that. Okay. Why did you hesitate? Why did you say it's what's on our website or what we have in the warehouse?
So, well, we have other sizes that we may not offer on the website that we use for
custom
fabrication or even things like a custom size that we've ground down or something like that. But we have I think we have 5 and 4 that we sit around, but we use those for fabrication, I guess.
Okay. Component Supply stocks how many wall thicknesses of hypodermic tubing?
How many wall thicknesses? We stock 4 wall thicknesses.
What are they? Bonus question.
Oh, man. That would be regular wall, thin wall, extra thin wall, and ultra thin wall.
That's correct.
If you're going to do it, give it to me.
You're right. Okay. So we talk about wall thicknesses. We also kind of with, I wouldn't say great fear and trepidation, but kind of tell our customers, don't just specify wall thickness. They should specify other dimensions. What dimensions do they need to specify? This is kind of a side note. This isn't the game. What do you recommend they specify in addition to a gauge size, and why?
So they should always specify an outside diameter. The hypodermic tubing is based off the Birmingham wire gauge, which is an outside diameter. So the outside diameter is the first thing to specify. Then pick one. I would generally choose the ID because you're usually attempting to run something through that, whether it's gas liquid or it's a push pull something. But pick one or the other. Don't pick 2. You're gonna narrow yourself to either supplier or potentially get yourself into a situation where you're having to. If it goes through all the process, you're having to custom run something to meet those specifications. So generally, I would say the outside diameter and then an inside diameter spec.
Yeah, and we get this a lot. A customer will call out an extra thin wall. That's the spec for our ultra thin wall or something like that. So that's why we recommend the actual specifications versus just a wall thickness. We will help you through that process, of course, but whether you're working with Component Supply or someone else, it's always important to add those additional specs.
Yeah.
Okay, let me think of another question for you. Oh, yes. Please hold. What standard lengths do we supply our hypodermic tubing in?
All right. "30 inches long and 60 inches long.
You know what you did.
You mean all the little sizes?
All the little sizes.
The short ones.
The bits and pieces of hypodermic tubing, Mark.
Oh my goodness. It starts as like a 1/4 inch and goes.
Yes. So like 3 inches.
Yeah, but they're like 1/8 inch. Yeah, there's tons of, I don't know. I can't do that.
If you are watching this and not just listening and you see me look beyond the camera, we have Stephanie Adams as our technician today, and she also does fact checking for us. So that's why I'm looking that way. So yes, you can go to componentsupplycompany.com and you can buy 1/4 inch piece of hypodermic tubing. That's one of the ways we're a resource for research and development. We don't want you to have to pay the crazy shipping for a 72 inch piece when you really just need to know if it fits. Another way that you can do that is by buying hypodermic tubing lab kits. Those are on the website. We have about 10 different lab kits that have different configurations of lengths and wall thicknesses and gauge sizes. So those are great to keep in your lab or in your shop when you're just trying to figure out what specification you need before you have to commit to a large volume. Okay. Less with the pen, but we do want to talk about capabilities. Can you list maybe your top 3 favorite capabilities of hypodermic tubing?
Oh no, I can't narrow it down to my favorites.
Can we do 5?
Sure.
Let's do 5.
So obviously bending is one.
Lots of bending.
Lots of bending. We do some end forming, so this or tip grinding, if you will, bevel cuts. Now I'm at a loss.
So
you got me
grind?
Here. Oh, we do some grinding, some outside diameter grinding if we wanted to change the wall, or change the wall thickness. We bead blast, so we can etch different parts of it. That's now I've gone through my top.
That's perfect. That's enough time because we are almost out of time. Okay. What can people expect as far as capabilities for our custom fabrication capabilities?
For hypodermic tubing?
For hypodermic tubing.
In terms of, they can expect them to
is the lead time 40 weeks?
It'd be nice if somebody planned out 40
It's not.
weeks.
It's not 40 weeks.
No, we wouldn't expect someone to do that. I think depending on the order and quantity, somewhere between a week and 2 weeks. If somebody wanted 100 pieces, we're gonna bend it, weld it together. We'll do whatever in about a week. Jobs that get over 5,000, 10,000, that's going to be a couple weeks out.
Sure. So we do have customers that actually wanted it yesterday. They come and they say, I don't really know what I'm looking for, but I know I needed it yesterday. We have those conversations. What do you recommend for someone that's in that much of a hurry? Like a week is too long, and they just need to know if it's going to work.
Right. So this is why we put together a rapid development team. Out of our fabrication team, we carved out a group for rapid development, and this is where we're going to sit down and try and pull that off by the end of the day or the next day. We're going to try and ship it in 24 hours.
Awesome. That's really it. That's a wrap on our hypodermic tubing feature and our first podcast. We made it through. We made it. So thank you for watching or listening wherever you are. Now go out and change the world.